The next question here is from @GoGoMountain. And the question is, how is first year spending selected in a guardrails plan, and why can the upper and lower guardrails be asymmetric? Fantastic question. First year spending in a guardrails plan is determined by a variety of variables. The primary variables are actually the ones I've just described, which are desired spending, total portfolio size, years until next income source. Those are really the primary variables. Now, again, I'm going to give a tease to Wednesday's video that's coming out on Wednesday, the 12th of August. So depending on when you're watching this, I'm actually going to show this in great technical detail, how you can actually toggle up or down your willingness to accept risk in retirement in order to receive a higher level of approved spending in retirement. But basically, you have your financial variables, and then you have your risk tolerance. Not like investment risk. I'm talking about personal risk, specifically behavioral risk, which I would quantify as your comfort for the likelihood of a spending adjustment in retirement and your comfort for the size of a spending adjustment in retirement. Depending on those two variables, you can toggle them. You will get a different approved first year or annual, ongoing annual spending capacity in retirement. So it really is about those two variables as the final decision-making criteria. Like you arrive at retirement with how much money you have, with how much you want to spend, and what your guaranteed income sources are. You can make all that definitive. The decisions that you really can control are how comfortable are you with the certain size of a spending adjustment. So let me illustrate that. Let's say you are comfortable retiring with a spending capacity of $100,000 a year, and you find out that this year you have enough financial resources and the future income sources to support $100,000 a year of spending capacity gross of tax, and that all works for you. If you were someone who was willing to accept, let's say, a 10% probability of making any spending adjustment in retirement at any point, which is a very, very conservative plan. That's like that's an above 90% Monte Carlo, like probably significantly above a 90% Monte Carlo. So we're talking very conservative. You would have, if you were willing to accept that level of risk, I mean, you were very risk averse, you would have a very, very tight lower guardrail. Very is a hyperbolic word. You'd have a tighter lower guardrail than someone who's willing to accept more risk, meaning you would have a higher likelihood of a spending adjustment, but a very small spending adjustment. If you were willing to accept a lot more risk, let's say 40% likelihood of a spending adjustment in retirement, which is a pretty high probability, right? Then you would have a wider guardrail, meaning you could go longer because you would be able to go longer. Conversely, if you wanted to accept a bigger spending adjustment and a higher probability of a spending adjustment, you would be able to obtain more spending money early in retirement because those two variables are basically you acknowledging that you would be willing to make a more substantial spending cut, and therefore you have more discretionary budget. So you could start with more spending, but you would trim a lot more spending when the negative eventuality occurred. I gave a whole rambling long explanation that is maybe beyond the scope of what you've asked, but the point is, it's dependent on those factors. And so arriving at a good first year approved spending capacity in a guardrails plan is largely about having a lot of experience beyond the financial components of determining what level of risk a person is willing to accept based on how well you know them. And this is where it's a bit psychological. Like as humans going into retirement ourselves for the first and only time, we're really not good judges of our own comfort with risk. And part of that's not to be blamed. We're not to be blamed. It's like we've never done it before. So we could think we're very highly risk tolerant and that we have no problem accepting lots of risk. But when, S hits the fan, so to speak, we find ourselves behaving very differently than we might have expected. Conversely, we could find the opposite. I have seen both of these situations play out. So doing a lot of modeling and actual hypotheticals, but also going through like a investigative process where we talk about splitting expenses between fundamental expenses or mandatory and discretionary and maybe bonus expenses, like creating these bucketed categories of expenses can be very useful because it helps us start to have that dialogue and determine whether someone would actually make the spending adjustments at the time that they said they would. So I'll give you an example. Someone could come and you could take two people. One could come and say, hey, I'm willing to cut, I want to spend $100,000 a year in retirement. I'm willing to cut $20,000 a year if my portfolio drops by 50%. I want to have all the spending, and I'm willing to wait till a very late point in time to cut my spending, but I would be willing to make a huge cut. Then you go and interview them and you say, okay, let's talk about what your spending sources are or what your spending items are. And it's housing and utilities, and you find out that they have nothing they'd be willing to cut. You say, hey, split all these expenses into a bucket of things that are fundamental and things that are bonus that you would completely be willing to cut on a moment's notice. And they don't do that. Like, everything goes into the fundamental bucket. Now we have a difference of their behavior versus their words, not to be judged. It's an illustrative exercise, right? It's something to help us understand and think through what we say versus what we would actually do. It can be very, very helpful to do that. So that's why going through these set of steps to determine this first year spending capacity is so important and so useful. And so if any of you are trying to do this and consider that, I highly recommend the exercise. The framework, just to repeat it from the top, is you have your financial or demographic things. It's how much money you have, how much you want to spend, and you have your years until your next guaranteed income source or income source kicks in. Then you have these variables you can toggle, such as your comfort with your probability of making a spending adjustment and the size of that spending adjustment. And then you have a final exercise, which is actually splitting your expenses up into labeled buckets and saying, I will commit to this being a bonus expense. And that means I'd have to cut it at some point. And can I make that commitment? And you do all this in advance of retiring, ideally, because you don't want to find out after you've retired that you're not willing to make those trade-offs. That would be a pretty risky business. Great question, and thank you for the opportunity to answer that at GoGo Mountain. Real quick, let me show you the exact 3-pillar comprehensive retirement roadmap that takes retirees from uncertainty to peace of mind that less than 1% of retirees actually have in place. Now, I've built hundreds of these for retirees, and I can say with a high degree of confidence that these are the 3 pillars every retiree needs to have in place in order to have full confidence that they're not missing anything in their retirement plan. And I broke each of these down by the specific questions. You can see them here that each needs to be answered and the best way to answer them. Now, we've done this across pre-retirees, recent retirees, married couples, single retirees, $1 million portfolios, $10 million portfolios, all the above, and it works. And it's my gift to you today. It's absolutely free. It's in the first link in the description below this video. It's going to say free comprehensive retirement roadmap training. Just click the link, enter your info, and you'll get instant access, all for free.